another edition of the BlueWhite Tailgate podcast. Andrew Calista, Mike Rhoades, and Frank Bodani. Mike Rhoades with an early smile, and we're just getting to introductions. That's because we got a great show. The main focus, college football playoff. A lot of talk on that. James Franklin and the entire coaching staff meets with the media scrum up in Happy Valley, and some injury news and notes here as the Lions go through the summer. And yes, we will also talk a little bit about Penn State basketball. But gentlemen, we got to start with the college football playoff. And let's start with the future. What camp are you in? Are you in the 5-11, 5+11 formula, whatever it's being called? Or are you in the 4-4-2-2-1-3? Nothing says slimlined and everybody knows what's going on than a formula that goes 4-4-2-2-1-3. It's almost like one big, beautiful pork-filled bill talking about the college football playoff when you put it like that. What camp are you in?
Well, if those are my two choices, I'm for 5+11. I'm not for multiple automatic bids for any conference, because that is, I just think, ridiculous. I think it's the Big Ten and the SEC kind of playing bully and pushing everybody else around. This has apparently happened because there was a meeting among these conference commissioners plus Notre Dame in which the Big Ten and the SEC said, you've got to give us this stuff or we'll just go away and create our own playoff. And I think if you injected some of these people with truth serum, they would tell you that they would be entirely happy with the Big Ten and SEC merging and forming an NFL-sized, roughly, major league of college football. And that would come at the expense of rivalries. It would come at the expense of the sort of regionalism that is part of the charm of college football, according to most people who understand and enjoy college football. And it would also come at the sacrifice of the impact of the regular season, which is the one thing above all others that, in my view, sets college football apart from all the other sports that we pay attention to in America. So I think it's a stupid, ridiculous idea.
Well, it's greedy, and we understand, and James Franklin talked about that. It's like these people get more and more power, the Big Ten, the SEC, more and more teams, more and more power, more and more money, so they want to control their best interests. And you're right, Mike, it's their best interests are not the best interests of the public. I mean, and it's like, I don't know, is the public tuned in to 5-5-4, 4-2-3, 4-9? I mean, do they even? I mean, the thing is, it's like last year was the first year of this that we finally got the real playoff, and all of a sudden, everything in 1 year is being taken for greed, and we need 5 automatic qualified. It's ridiculous. I mean, who should have automatic entries? How is that? How is that fair? How does that even make any sense for people who want to watch what they did last year? I mean, last year was fun. It was a start. It was fun tweaking it, but yeah, I'm completely with you, Mike. Completely with you.
There aren't going to be many years when there are 5 or 6 or, even 4 legitimate playoff teams from any conference. But if such a year does occur, then with a 16-team field, I think it's more likely without the automatic qualifiers than with them that you would get that 5th or 6th team, much in the way that the SEC got 13 teams in the basketball tournament this year. I think I think those automatic qualifiers really suck a lot of the air out of this whole thing. I think it's an awful idea.
I mean, look at it like, I think this was a great first year for the playoffs. Sure, there's some things that need to be tweaked and changed, and they can do that. To me, so maybe you go. I like the idea of 16 teams. I think that pushes it, includes a few more people without changing what we got to start with, right? But my thing is, what are they doing with conference championship games? Because to me, that's the thing there is really awkward at this point. Like when they had a 14 playoff, they really meant a lot. The conference championship games, I'm not sure what they mean at this point. It's almost, to some degree, make that game, and you could be looked at as being penalized for that, right? Mm-hmm. The two teams that played for the national title last year, they weren't in conference championship games, correct? They got to sit out the first week of the playoffs.
Yes. Yep, that's correct.
What are they going to do with that? I mean, do we know that? What do you guys think?
Well, I think they're going to keep them because it's a paycheck. It's a lot of money. It's TV dollars. It's another game. Even if they expanded them, the playoff to 16 teams and an extra round, I still think they're going to keep the conference championship games because what's the saying? When the toothpaste is out of the tube, it doesn't go back in. So it's already established, and you're not going to give up money that's already on the table, and we're already going towards revenue sharing. So then I just think it just gets more and more like an NFL season, collective bargaining. That's where I think it's going. I'm with you guys. I think this whole guaranteed bid is crap. When I go back to when the Big East expanded in basketball, Jim Boeheim, I'm a Syracuse graduate, Jim Boeheim was adamant that the Big East should get more teams in the NCAA tournament because of the size of the conference. And it was, well, if we're a 12-team conference, we'd get these many teams in. Or a 16-team conference should have this many teams in. Of course, that was Syracuse was, pushing for 20 wins and then didn't make the tournament and had to go to the NIT. So that was the whole thinking behind that, is they were the first team kind of left out. I just think it waters down the competition. I could very easily make a case that Indiana shouldn't have been in the college football playoff last year. Even though I said they should have been last year, a case could be made very easily that they should not have been in the college football playoff. And the same thing goes with the way the schedule is working out in the Big Ten. And a lot of the SEC pundits are kind of like pointing this out. There's not a lot of good top to bottom teams in the Big Ten. I get the Big Ten's on a roll right now, but in the past, the Big Ten was kind of getting thrashed on the national scene. And what did Bill O'Brien say? Bill O'Brien was always like, well, it's cyclical and it'll come around. Well, now it's come around. So don't give me this. Just give me the best teams. Give me your conference champions and then give me the 11 best. I think that's what's good for college football.
The Big Ten is riding high right now because it is so good at the top. But you're right. I don't think it's a great top to bottom league. And also another related to what you're saying, Andrew, is Ryan Day, the Ohio State coach, on Saturday was quoted as saying, I think we should have at least 4 teams. The Big Ten should have at least 4 teams in the playoffs. And one of the arguments he made was that, similar to what Boeheim was saying, I think, was well, we gobbled up 4 teams from the Pac-12, and the Pac-12 would have got a couple teams in the playoffs. So why shouldn't we get those?
I disagree with that statement, and I think it's I don't want to say a loser's mentality because Ryan Day is not a loser. Ryan Day is a winner, but I think it's corporate. It's CEO and it's corporate. It's something that I would expect to see from like the major banks in America. Like it's just, I don't like it. I think it's terrible. That's where I stand on the whole automatic bid thing into the conference. And by the way, the conferences schedule, have your best teams play each other every single year. Not Penn State has 2 tough games. Oregon has 2-3 tough games. Let's get 4 tough games on the schedule with these mega conferences.
Well,
but
that's going to be hard to do for everybody.
It is. But now you have the playoff. But the reason they don't want to do that is because they want to protect their asset, and their asset is the college football playoff. You don't want somebody running into a couple buzzsaws because then it possibly knocks them out of a college football playoff spot if they were a borderline team.
I'm with you.
Yeah,
Can't help us.
pretty fair. I mean, Penn State, I don't know. I mean, should they? I mean, they have. It looks like they're going to have play at least two of the powers every year. Do you really think they should? You think they should try to play Oregon, Ohio State, and who else every year? Michigan, they'll USC, all of them every year. I don't think you could divvy it up though that way, can you?
It would be difficult with 8 teams to divvy it up, but that's another part of the point here. Now we knew that James. Of course, James was asked about this yesterday. We knew that he was not going to go nuts the way Ryan Day did, but his familiar refrain here is we ought to have a commissioner. Everybody should be in a conference. Everybody should play a conference championship game. Everybody should play the same number of conference games. Every conference should play the same number of conference games. Well, you can do that and still have huge disparities in strength of schedule, as evidenced by Indiana last year, which had like the 103rd ranked strength of schedule, whereas there were other teams in the Big Ten who were in the top 10 in strength of schedule, depending on how you measure strength of schedule. So I think James's argument is, while it's not quite as outrageous as Ryan Day's, I think it's almost equally flawed, honestly.
Yeah, he should be the commissioner of freaking college football, right? Get him out and be the commissioner, because Nick Saban's not going to. Is Nick Saban what is Nick Saban's position right now?
Golfer in chief, I think.
Yeah, he's a golfer. Yeah, he's a golfer. Pro-am fodder there for Nick. Yeah. And if you had, here's another thing: if you had a commission, if they somehow elected a commissioner of college football right now, are you telling me that the SEC and the Big Ten wouldn't be leaning on that guy to be favorable to us? We're not going to vote for you to be commissioner, or we're not going to ratify, approve, whatever you got to do to make you commissioner unless you're going to be favorable to us.
Right.
Going back to the interconference schedules, I just think because the Big Ten, it's so top heavy. That's the Big Ten's quite a problem. In the SEC, I think it becomes balanced out. And in the SEC, when they have the crossover games, Alabama playing Tennessee, Auburn playing Georgia. These were marquee brand names that are playing everybody. So in the SEC, it always worked out that, yes, I know they were always playing a 1AA team late in the year. But for the most part, there was brand on brand. I look at Penn State's schedule. Penn State UCLA is not brand on brand. It should be, but UCLA is putrid, where you actually question, do they even want to play football?
Wow.
Well, come on now.
It's pretty bad.
UCLA is not that bad.
Kalista coming in hard.
It's pretty bad. So Michigan State is in a tailspin right now. And we just have to go back a short while where when Penn State was playing Wisconsin, Michigan State, Michigan, and Ohio State, like those are 4 high quality games right there.
Yeah, there were years when they had 4 elite games on their schedule. You're right. But I just think it's going to be hard to do that in an 18-team league year after year.
Yes. And it's disappointing because the fans are supposed to win and the fans aren't necessarily winning, which brings me to my next point.
Fans are not winning. I agree.
Big Ten on CBS football is not winning. Poor Gary Danielson is being driven into retirement because he can't even watch it anymore. He might not say it, but that's the reason why.
Now, wait a minute. You're saying Gary Danielson retired because he can't stomach the Big Ten?
Did you see the SC or the Big Ten on CBS's lineup?
Okay. Their slate of games. Okay.
I would retire. If I went from calling the game of the week, the SEC on CBS, for however long that took place, and then I had to go through that, I'd retire.
It's the end of an era.
Frank, what do you think?
Well,
I don't, Okay, I think their Penn State's schedule is no worse. I think it's just as good and just as hard as it was when Joe coached in the Big Ten. Because you go back, covering that team, Ohio State wasn't anything like they are now.
What
I
year
mean,
did you say, Frank? Going back to when?
like when Joe's coaching in the Big Ten from
Okay.
'94 all the way up until his end.
Yeah.
I mean, back on a lot of in the '90s, Penn State's schedule in the Big Ten was not that hard. It was a lot. Now, maybe it wasn't as top heavy of a league, and there was a lot of decent teams, but they were not like great teams. I mean, Penn State had to play two of the best teams in the country last year. In Oregon, one, Ohio State, two. USC was a good team when they played them. I mean, I don't think their schedule was in a way, it's different. It's strange that they're playing teams on the West Coast, but I don't think it's really any less difficult than it was before. I thought Joe had it easier coaching in the Big Ten than James Franklin did. Hands down, to me, no question, because Joe never had to go against Michigan being as good as they were, Ohio State being a juggernaut every single year. And now you have to play Oregon. And I still think USC isn't going away. I think it's different and it's a little strange, but I think the schedule is hard. And you know what? They played West Virginia last year, which is scheduled ahead of time. That's about as good of a non-conference game as you'd want in this schedule. So
If they played a Power Four conference team, one of them non-conference, which they did last year with
they usually do.
That would make a difference.
Right. And they usually do. A lot of times they do. I mean, but the thing is, you're playing 9 conference games, and I don't have any problem with I think their schedule is tough enough as it is. And then you're going to be made to play the Big Ten championship game, which to me means nothing now, right? With the playoffs, that game means zero zilch. All it does is hurt. What does that mean right now, right? With the playoffs, I don't think it has any meaning other than it's another game to cover. And I mean, it doesn't mean the same thing it did in 2016.
Well, I think it was, yeah, that's right. I think that was one of the reasons why they went to make those games more meaningful, is one of the reasons why they went with the seeding approach that they did last year, which everybody, I think, agrees was a mistake, and which they have already fixed. It's not going to be like that going forward.
Right.
Somebody said, an outlet said, that Penn State has lost all the leeway to do what they did last year with this. I call it realignment of the seeds, where the top 4 seeds are now the top 4 seeds, and nobody's being dropped down after nobody who had a first round bye won a game last year. I don't think Penn State loses any leeway. I don't think anybody loses any leeway with the seeding of the game. I think what it comes down to is I think fans, now you're absolutely rooting for teams to win, when on this program, I was very adamant, and I believe everybody was kind of in agreement with it, that Penn State would be best served to win or to lose the Big Ten championship and get the 6th seed, which is what happened, because you knew Ohio State, where they were going to be, and Oregon was going to run into them.
Well, it's not so much leeway as it is. They're probably going to have to beat Oregon or Ohio State in order to get as favorable a path as they had last year. That's probably, you don't know, but probably.
I don't think that'll ever happen. What happened, and Frank, you tell me what you think. If the Big 12 is now considered a, quote, mid-major conference, which we could make the argument, everybody outside of the Big 10 and the SEC is now a mid-major. So Big 12 and ACC. I don't think you'll ever have an opponent go the first 2 rounds without coming up against a Big 10 or an SEC opponent now after going SMU, Boise State. I think that's done. Notre Dame will be counted as a Big 10 SEC type program.
Yeah, you really shouldn't. I mean, I don't knock Penn State. Penn State had nothing to do with that. But yeah, I don't think you really want to see Penn State or a team play SMU and Boise State in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. So that won't happen again, hopefully, right? I mean,
yeah, they fixed that. It would be very unlikely, very, very unlikely for that to happen.
Right, and yes, and I think a team like Boise State isn't going to get a bye anymore. I mean, so a lot of that. I mean, it's changed. So I don't think we have to worry about that. And I mean, it was. I think you got to pass and a little bit because this is the first year of the playoffs, and Penn State and Notre Dame played a really good game, and so on and so forth. But yeah, you don't have to worry about that. The thing is, Penn State, you got to take advantage of your opportunities when they're in front of you, no matter what they are. Penn State kind of did last year, but they got to now. I mean, the thing is no matter who they're playing coming up and they're making the playoffs, this is their best team as far as talent and depth and such that they've had under James Franklin. And so, yeah, how do they take advantage of it? And that's really what's going to me, determine what you think of the season, not even how the playoffs are or who they're going to be playing. Because if you're as good as what you think, it shouldn't matter for this team, to me, in a way, who they get.
One thing, I don't want anybody to construe that I'm saying Penn State is at fault for the schedule, in my opinion, lacking. I think it's the conference, and the conference is trying to protect their assets and protect their top teams, which Penn State is one of their top teams. But if you look at the matrix going forward, it's kind of done where you get 2 top teams and then you get a team that treads the line between top and bottom. Now, if Nebraska comes up, now that's a game. Iowa finds an offense, that's a game. Michigan State corrects itself, and boom, we're back to it. I do think, though, however, that the Big Ten was much stronger when, Drew Brees types were quarterbacking at Purdue rather than,
Purdue was tough out. Purdue was tough out, even if they weren't a superpower.
Yeah.
A couple years ago, Michigan State was a real tough out. I think they kind of caught lightning in a bottle and got some transfer portal people, and they absurdly overreacted to that in terms of paying the coach, and maybe they're paying for that a little bit now. But Michigan at the end of the year was playing really well. And of course they beat Alabama in a bowl game for whatever you think that's worth. So it, they might be on the rebound. Nebraska, as you said, might be on the rebound a little bit. So it might be a better top to bottom league this year, but it really is kind of a similar. I think it's pretty similar.
You guys were up at the meet and greet, the summer meet and greet that James Franklin annually holds. Everybody was available. A little different format this year, being that Beaver Stadium's under construction. I don't think there was any luncheon. I missed the days of the luncheon. That was always very fun. What did you guys learn outside of the college football playoff talk and James going right down the middle like the Senate parliamentarian, on that? But what did you guys learn from talking? Frank, you had a great article on defensive backs. That's your bread and butter. We know that favorite position. If there was a number one position that Frank Bodani would rank at Penn State, not linebacker, not quarterback, not running back, it would be defensive backs. Frank, what did you learn as you got to talk to Terry Smith?
Okay, not even defensive backs, cornerbacks. We're being more specific here.
Okay.
My thing used to be special teams. Now I'm on cornerbacks. Actually, I think, so if you look at the team, obviously their running backs are tremendous. But to me, their other 2 best units are their offensive line, should be their best in 30 years, and their cornerback room, which I need to hype up because it's not getting as much credit as it should. So anyway, Terry Smith, always a great interview, I believe. And I like to get him asking him questions because he'll go with a little hyperbole. And he says, A.J. Harris could be as good as any Penn State quarterback who's ever played at the school. Wow. Thought, okay, great. Now tell me why. Why do you say this? So then he went on and described AJ's qualities, which I think is And I think it's interesting because it's not a position that gets the same looks at other positions. I think it's unique because if you are really good at cornerback, you may not even be noticed.
Yeah.
Right? Because they won't throw the ball at you. So what other position is like that, where the better you get, sometimes the less action you get? So it's sometimes harder to tell maybe how good so-called somebody like A.J. Harris is. I think he went a little under the radar last year, first year at Penn State, but there he says he has everything to be as good as Joey Porter, Kalen King, and we can go down the list, so on and so forth. And I think that's huge because obviously the best teams you're playing can throw the football very well. And Penn State has more than A.J. Harris. And, we know that they have at least 4 returning quality cornerbacks. How many teams can say that? 1. And then they might have one of the best young corners in the league, and Darius Dixon. And people know Darius Dixon from the hit he made in the blue-white game that could be heard throughout Beaver Stadium. Correct. What do you think?
Oh, it was kind of an interesting, kind of a different format yesterday. It was in the Lash building. James was in the auditorium where they hold the team meetings, but then we could go into the offices of all the position coaches. So I did a little bit with Danny O'Brien for a magazine piece I'm doing about Drew Aller. I haven't got to talk to Drew Aller yet. Hint, hint. So that was pretty good stuff. And then I talked a little bit to Andy Frank, the player personnel guy, talking about this idea that we want to recruit players who fit into the family, and in the transfer portal, and particularly in the case of these wide receivers, you kind of have to shorthand the process of figuring out if they belong in the family. And Frank said that a lot of the guys, Andy Frank said that a lot of those guys were people that we had connections to, people who used to be here, people who are here now who were at the previous school where the kid was, a guy that we already recruited, that kind of stuff. He said that makes it a lot easier. And he's still convinced that there's a niche for Penn State in terms of, some programs are just the highest bidder kind of approach to recruiting. We're not going to be that way for better or worse or whatever you think of that. We're not going to be that way, but still the financial part is obviously an important factor. And then some Kotelnicki stuff about Aller, and that was about it for me.
Yeah, I thought Dan Connor is a pretty good interview too, and it's my first time really getting a chance really to talk to him since he played at Penn State. Probably.
Yeah, they made him available at one of the spring workouts, and that was really the first time I've talked to him in a gazillion years. Yeah,
but he was good, and we're talking about Tony Rojas and the linebacker and in the linebacker room, and I just thought Dan seemed really at ease talking to us about players, and I could get a 5-10 minute sense that, I kind of maybe understand where we're going with hiring this guy, right? He's a young guy. Obviously, he was a great player, but you read about how he seems can connect with kids and teach what he knows, and I'm like, wow, he's impressive.
Yeah, he is a pretty impressive guy.
Does that surprise you guys? Because it doesn't surprise me, because when Manny Diaz was hired, and I was always impressed with Manny Diaz, not because his hair is better than mine, but just because it's not as good as yours, Frank. I don't want you to take that.
He's got some solid hair.
He does have some solid hair. But I still remember Manny Diaz's first media availability during a spring practice and just standing out there on the grass fields. And I asked about Dan Connor and what he brings to the table. And he's like, just tremendous. Like Manny lit up just talking about him. It's like, as I'm trying to talk to these guys about what I need to see from them. And I remember asking Curtis Jacobs about it as well. And I just point over to Dan Connor, and Dan Connor, there's a guy that did it at every level: high school football in Pennsylvania, college football at Penn State, and then in the NFL. And he's relaying it to the guys, in a more recent manner and in like kind of a younger manner than what Manny Diaz was doing. And it's like, this guy's done everything. And Curtis Jacobs, you saw, we say, it's like he's helping us tremendously just going over film. And so it doesn't surprise me that Dan has fit that coach's mold just based on what Curtis Jacobs has said about him, Kobe King has said about him, all the linebackers really, and including Manny Diaz.
I don't think it's so much that we were that surprised as we just. I was just kind of curious what he was going to be like in an interview situation. One thing that he did that impressed me recently on Twitter, he posted a video of Mr. T. I think it was on Mother's Day. He posted a video. Dan Connor did this. I'm telling you, check it out. A video of Mr. T singing some goofy song about be nice to your mother with background singers. It looked like video from the 70s. It was hilarious in a stupid way. And that impressed me, that Dan Connor, that did not seem like a typical move for a Penn State football coach. So I like that.
No, and Penn State's done. I mean, you didn't know where this was headed when James was hired as far as his coaching staff, but, they brought in more former Penn State guys, and I don't think necessarily, to me, hires that struck you that, wow, that's a home run, right? But he's done really, really well. I mean, Terry Smith, who was a receiver at Penn State, was good at I think everybody knew he was good at recruiting, but I mean, the job he's done as a cornerbacks coach, hands down, tremendous. But Ty Howell at tight end in that room and what he's done. And now Dan Connor's another one. And, these were not necessarily guys you knew were going to be, they weren't necessarily proven big-time college coaches. But so.
Well, it's fair to say Connor did not have a glitzy resume coming into this. I mean, he had been in coaching, but it's Westchester, it's Widener, it's high school, high-level high school, but so he didn't have a big resume. But for a position coach, it wasn't a crazy reach. And but yeah, let's just say that we're impressed with this guy. We're impressed.
It's worked well, and then of course Jim Knowles and Andy Kotelnicki there just perfectly at ease themselves with, like, you almost get the feeling like they kind of maybe know how good the team is or how good their rooms are, their units are. And I think it was interesting. Somebody asked about, Andy, what the feel of the team around the building, around Lash, has been since they lost in the Orange Bowl. And, I thought that's kind of interesting because I really think more so maybe than almost any time I've covered the team in 30 whatever years, that they have this feeling of confidence about who they are and what they can be. And it goes past like, okay, so we don't know who their defensive end is going to be opposite Denai Dennis Sutton, and they just lost an important one, or seemingly one, in Max Granville, who's injured. But I don't think that phases this coaching staff and this team. I think they have that much confidence, and the college football playoff is what did that for them, because they trended well at the end of the year and they got their guys back. And I just think this team there's just a different feeling around not just the players, but definitely the coaching staff.
I would compare it kind of to 2018. After the bowl game, do you guys remember when there was the meeting, the so-called meeting where the juniors asked the seniors to leave?
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I didn't know.
That 2008 team was a serious football team, and they knew how good they could be. And they, without Sean Lee, they were a pretty good football team.
Went to the Rose Bowl.
Pretty good football team.
Yep.
And I would compare it that, and a break here, one break literally for that team, and they're playing in the national championship game. And as our colleague Dave Jones would say, it was not pass interference on Anthony Scarrato out in Iowa City. So that would be the break. Frank, I wanted to go back. Who does A.J. Harris remind you of if you could pick somebody to kind of compare his game to?
God, I don't really know what to say to that exactly. Penn State has not had a litany of highly hyped, promising quarterbacks in their history the last 30 years. I mean, they've never had a first round NFL draft choice as a defensive guy. I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, he's certainly of recent vintage. He's bigger than Kalen King, but he doesn't have the kind of the length that Joey Porter had. It from listening to Terry talk, because I'm listening to him more than me, right? Because A.J. Harris had 5 pass breakups last year and 1 interception. That's not a lot of high impact highlight work, right? Yep. Doesn't mean he's not good. But so I'm thinking he just talks about how he can do everything well. He can cover receivers outside, inside, his instincts. And so, I don't know. I mean, my favorite is Alan Zamitis, but you got to prove to me that he's got the kind of smolder that Alan Zamitis has as a playmaker. He hasn't proven that yet to me. This is a big room. Jim Knowles said that room has a ton of personality, and that's what you want from cornerbacks, is guys that have confidence and personality. And I think I'm just be intrigued to see how they can impact the season. I think they didn't have quite the impact that we maybe thought last year as well, but I think Trent.
I would contrast him a little bit to Joey Porter, because Porter was a long, strong guy who could sort of manhandle receivers a little bit, very physical, tight, and Harris maybe is a more complete player. Maybe is a guy who's going to be really good in run support, and maybe is going to be able to cover in when you're really in open space a little better than Porter. It's hard to say style of play for a corner, because it's pretty straightforward. You cover people. How well do they cover people? But there is a little contrast between him and Porter, and maybe if this guy reaches his upside, he'll be just as good and maybe a more complete player than Porter.
I don't know if this comparison is going to hold, because I'm going way back to when I was like a kid, but the Miami Dolphins had a pretty good cornerback tandem with Patrick Surtain and Sam Madison. I think Surtain went to Southern Miss and Sam Madison went to Louisville.
I could not have predicted that you were going to make this comparison, people.
And I'm not comparing him to Patrick Surtain, whose obviously son is doing great things.
He was good.
But I mean, like, that would kind of be like my Joey Porter comparison a little bit. But then Sam Madison, a little bit smaller, a little bit more physical, I thought, at least trying to remember this. But I always thought he was like more quiet, and he wasn't like a flamboyant cornerback who was really good on the Miami Dolphins. I think he had a 12-year career, maybe 11, 13, something around there. And I'm not saying A.J. Harris is like going to be Sam Madison. I'm comparing it more like personality-wise into what he brings to the table and kind of that. I mean, I think that's a pretty high comparison. And everybody at Penn State should be happy that if you're thinking A.J. Harris is like Sam Madison, everybody would take that every day of the week and twice a week.
Yeah, we'll take it. I have not talked to him. Frank, have you talked to him, Harris?
No, I have not. No, I mean, I think, Elliott Washington is one of the cornerbacks up for the other starting spot who won every single winter workout session, which I think is a first at Penn State. And you got Aldavian Collins, who's pretty feisty, outgoing kid, and Zion Tracy, who picked sixth Ohio State last year and actually had some promise as a punt returner. So it's an interesting collection of talent there, more than we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
We don't usually talk about
those. Yeah, those 4 guys, I think, they can win with.
The Max Granville injury that James Franklin confirmed, long-term injury. Where what does this do for Penn State going forward? Who is the guy? Because he was supposed to get a ton of reps.
We don't know who
Right.
the guy, even before he went down, right? I think people were hoping that Max would battle and maybe be able to, he's good as what everybody thinks he could be a starter. But now, okay, that's off the table. So what you got left here is you got a fifth-year senior, Zariah Fisher, who's been around forever, who's never started a game before, partly because he'd struggled to stay healthy. You have a transfer, Anai White, who was also injured at Texas A&M and hasn't really lived up to his recruiting hype yet. So we have no idea what he gives. And then you have a bunch of young kids that, yeah, some of them were really good recruits, but we have no idea. And I think I'll say it like this. I'll loop back to your non-conference scheduling thing. The best part about this trying to find a new defensive end starter and new defensive tackle starter is your first 3 games of the year. Penn State at least has time to try to figure that out when the games start because we don't know. Interesting.
Mike, is this your weak link? Is if there's a weak link in the chain to a national championship? Now, we don't know how long this injury is, but just let's assume the worst. Is this the weak link for
Well,
Penn?
James certainly made it sound like it is, I would say, potentially season ending. I mean, that's what he made it sound like because he was already talking about here's what we got to do next. And a lot of pressure on Fisher. Fisher is a guy that's going to have to do it now. And of course, James was very lavish in his praise of him, and he's under the radar. And we get halfway into the season, people are going to see what we all see in him, et cetera, et cetera. I would say the defensive line as a group right now would be the one flaw. And as Frank suggested, they are almost certainly going to be reliant on guys in that defensive front four that we don't know anything about right now. And that's more true with Granville being out. But they might have one of the best players on their team in Dennis Sutton, in that group. But the other thing about D-line is that you like to play a lot of guys if you can. You like to have more than 4 and run people in and out. So, yeah, this is significant. I mean, that was the one sort of hard news item from yesterday, and it is a significant one without question.
It's a really good point you made because Penn State has been so good on the defensive line, and they've had so much depth.
Yeah.
They've returned like 2 excellent proven defensive ends here for a while. And they, like you said, they got 2 of the best defensive linemen coming back in the league in Zane Durant and Dennis Sutton. But you need more than that. Not only do you need 2 more starters, like you said, you need a rotation.
Yeah.
So if there is a weak link, Andrew, I think it could simply be guys that if they don't find people to step up there, I mean, because we don't know who they are. I think most every other position on this roster, we can give you not just starters that we know about, but guys backing them up that have legitimate resume potentials. And these 2 positions are like, wow, this is what Penn State's known for, but that's why, hey, the first month of the season, it could be that, I mean, this could be their saving grace to me, because you got to not just find young guys, you got to be able to see if Zariah Fisher and Alonzo Ford, the defensive tackle who was hurt last year, can they physically handle this as we think? Are they Big Ten starters? We don't know.
The track record gives me promise. James's praise gives me worries because I like it when James does not give the praise. Gave praise to the wide receivers. You guys all know about the wide receivers, and they're starting to show it. Don't have a catch against Notre Dame. The wide receiver struggled all last year. When James called out the offensive line, which I've pointed out before at Big Ten Media Days, I thought that was a turning point for the James Franklin era at Penn State. So I like when James questions the talent, and that's when I know I feel James is confident.
you make a good point, Andrew, because I think of James. I always think about this when he's talking. I think of him as constantly playing against the sort of the perception, constantly playing against the perception, even to the point of, I remember some times when there were periods of time when one of the coordinators was getting an inordinate amount of attention and praise, even if, no matter who it was, Moorhead, Shub, going back, and he would kind of push up. Well, we got a lot of guys. We got a lot of guys that are doing a great job. He's doing a great job. We got a lot of guys that are doing a great job. Well, and it even go into that. I think that's constantly in his mind when he's talking to us. So you do kind of wonder if the guys that he's praising a lot are, that almost makes you question a little.
He said he was happy with wide receivers going into the COVID year, the Jahan Dotson year. We're happy, but we need guys to step up. We really need guys to step up, take control of the room. Jahan Dotson comes out of nowhere. It's one of those, I'm questioning. It wasn't one of those, oh, yeah, we're happy, they're working hard type things. And you got to try to read between the lines. So that's why James saying that about, we hope you guys see what we all see, gives me a little bit of a pause. Because he also said he was happy with punters the one time. And it was like watching my golf game at times. Shank Hughes can't there.
That's not good. That's less than ideal. Yeah, I think you're on to something there, fella.
All right, let's round it up here. Penn State basketball, they've signed their highest rated class of all time. They also get Turkish guard Mila Tumka. Hopefully I'm in the ballpark on that pronunciation. 6'5" guard who plays professionally in Turkey. Mike Rhoades definitely looking for a rebound year. Mike, you cover the basketball team a lot. You're familiar with the Penn State basketball team. What is your impression on this class that Penn State has brought in as they try to bounce back after what's a lot of people would say was a disappointment as things just did not gel last year?
I really don't know anything about the kid from Turkey, although I saw that they just signed him the other day, or got a commit from him the other day, and he has played professionally over in Turkey. So I mean that's all I can tell you about him. But the three kids that they've signed out of high school, I think two of them, Caden Mingo out of Long Island Lutheran, which is a big power up in New York, and Mason Blackwood from New Hampshire. Mingo is a guard, 6'2", kind of a combo, sort of point guard. And Blackwood is really a classic small forward. And those guys have played really at a high level in high school, really at a high level in the summer circuit, and guys that other like legitimate teams. I mean, I'm not saying they were Duke, Kentucky level recruits, but they were a notch below that. I think those two guys are significant and could help them next year and might have to help them next year. And I think I'm a little impressed that Mike was able to get on the trail of those two guys kind of early, get a commitment from them, and then get it nailed down. Who knows what NIL machinations went into that, but whether these guys are going to turn the thing around next year, I think that's a dubious proposition. But all you can do is recruit the best players you can, and these two are pretty good.
And Frank, before I ask you your perception on where Penn State has to go within the athletic department, Mike Rhoades also brought in 7-foot forward Ivan Juric from Croatia, which is, they lose a 7-footer, they bring in a 7-footer.
Yeah.
And the important thing is Penn State, in my opinion, needs to give him the resources to be able to retain these guys because, it's tough for a Mingo to come in as a freshman and lift up a program like Penn State in the Big Ten. The Big Ten is very good in basketball. Rhoades has already demonstrated the ability to beat top 10 teams, beat top 15 teams on the road. I think it takes time. So if Penn State could get these guys in 2 years, maybe not this year, but next year, 2 years down the road, looking at a possible tournament, because one thing that is clear, and it if it's not, it should be with the Yana Koenig Niedenhauser going to the NBA draft and seeing his stock rise. Mike Rhoades plucked him out of the portal, and nobody else saw him. And his game steadily
mid-major program
from a mid-major, Northern Illinois, I believe.
Northern Illinois. Yeah.
And developed him, and his footwork got better all year long. Kind of lived in foul trouble with the way the Big Ten plays, which kind of hampered Penn State. But Mike Rhoades had the eye to develop him, had the eye to see him, and then developed him. And that should bode well for Penn State going forward. Penn State administration, we hear about in football, we're all aligned. They have to do something with basketball to give the resources for the basketball program to receive, which brings me to Frank Bodani, our resident expert. Where does that fall in? Where can basketball, because basketball could be a moneymaker, Frank, and making money is the key, and it should be making more money. So how would you prioritize that, especially in an athletic department that is at least having on paper its most successful year ever in terms of results?
Well, I just hope they build that arena, that practice arena that you want so badly. That's a start, right?
We're with you. We're on that bandwagon with you, fellow.
You know what?
$27 million.
It's tough because, they're so good now at so many so-called minor sports. Like, they're having their greatest athletic year ever, and they've built these programs. But basketball is a huge spotlight, and it's not been Penn State's, to say it's not been in their wheelhouse in the last how many decades is an understatement, right? So maybe they have the right guy. And I think a little bit to your point is that hardships or not, tough or not, you're going to have to give Mike a little bit of time and see and get some success. Let his recruiting and his ability to coach these players up earn you that initial layer of success. And I know it feels like maybe starting over again, but I think, if you can do that, then I think you're building something. And then, I don't know, what is the facility, the big thing? I think the big thing is you guys are talking about these recruits that he's bringing in, and they're some of the best they've had. Be able to bring them in, coach them up, give them a little bit of time, and see what kind of cohesion he can build on a team at that level. And if he's as good as what maybe people believe in 2 years, maybe not like you said this year, next year, then all of a sudden maybe the whole image starts to really change beyond, outwardly. Really. I mean, I got to give it another season. And there's no other, I don't know how much more you can do, right? I mean, you have to bring these guys in and give them a shot. The best recruits they've had, do they have the depth, and can they withstand injury again this season that could kind of make it hard for them? Maybe not, but I mean, if you're bringing these guys in another season, is what you need. They're not going to be, you're not going to be the wrestling program, right? I mean, but that's what it is. I mean, we see certain programs get the spotlight, right? I mean, wrestling can win another 10 national titles, and they're not. And Cale Sanderson isn't going to touch James Franklin's salary, which we finally just found out what it is this week, Andrew.
Yep. Well, and speaking of that, we should point out that Mike Rhoades, in that right to know request paperwork that we saw this week, we saw that in the first year of a 5-year deal, he made almost $5 million. So, that's a significant commitment to a coach, and also the 5-year deal. That is a significant commitment. But maybe, as we have suggested before on this show, carry that a little bit to some other areas within the basketball situation.
It has to be a total thing, because to get a winning coach, which they rolled out soundbite after soundbite and quote after quote from Jay Wright to Shaka Smart, coaches all across the NCAA on Mike Rhoades' track record. Penn State has to pay to get a coach in because of its record, and they have to be able to at least be average in the Big Ten when it comes to NIL, because we know they're below average when it comes to facilities. They just are. And you can't be bad in 2 out of the 3. So I mean, coaching makes up for a lot of it.
Yep. I would agree.
It can't make up for everything. So, and again, he's already won big games against teams that have gone in the tournament, against teams in the top 10. I mean, Purdue was, supposed to be a really good team last year. They were a good team on the road to win at Wisconsin. So that's my basketball stuff. All right. That's all I got, guys. Let's just end on a joke. The Big Ten on CBS lineup: Nevada at Penn State, Oklahoma State at Oregon, USC at Purdue, Michigan at Nebraska. Definitely sounds like Alabama, Tennessee, Florida, Georgia, and all those great games. Gary Danielson.
Nearly identical, yeah.
I feel ya. That does it for this edition of the Blue White Tailgate Podcast. For Mike Frank, I'm Andrew Calista. Keep on watching it, even those 3:30 games when football season rolls around.